Okay, so we are back with the conclusion of Chapter 5, Let the Circle Be Unbroken. If you want to hear about the 2,000 subscriber giveaway, go back to Part 1 and check it out. Later in the day, when Papa mentioned to Uncle Hammer that he was going over to the Wigginses to fix their grist mill, Uncle Hammer dug into his pocket and pulled out his car keys. "Why don't you drive over? It'll give you a chance to see how the car rides." Papa grinned. "Bet it don't ride like that Packard." Uncle Hammer grinned back. "Man, ain't nothing in this world gonna ride like that Packard." Since no objections were voiced about our going along, the boys and I eagerly climbed into the car with Papa and Uncle Hammer. As we sped past the cotton field, Uncle Hammer said, "Every time I think about that fire, it just makes me sick." "Make me sick too," Papa admitted. "But just you wait, this year's crop's gonna be good. Another fire don't come up." Papa glanced at him and half smiled. "Let's hope not." When we were on Grangerland, Uncle Hammer waved a hand toward the forest path leading up to the Averys' place. "You seen much of the Averys?" "Seen them up at church, but that's about all. Mostly they've been keeping to themselves." Uncle Hammer shook his head. "I know it must be some kind of hard on them. It's a crying shame. What's this up here?" Up ahead, where the Harrison and Granger roads crossed, stood J.C. Peters with Joe Billy Monteer and Stuart Walker. As we neared, they looked up. All three appeared a bit apprehensive upon seeing the approaching car. But when Stuart saw who we were, he relaxed and continued talking to J.C. Joe Billy. Joe Billy, however, moved toward his car as if ready to leave. "Now what she thinks she doing?" Uncle Hammer's voice had changed. The warmth which had been there only a moment before was gone, and his body had stiffened, now on the alert. Papa slowed the car, but before we were at the full stop, he cautioned, "Now watch it, Hammer." He rolled down the window and spoke to J.C. "You going somewhere we can give you a lift?" J.C. looked embarrassed. "No, sir, Mr. Logan. I'm just on my way home from the store." J.C. lived farther down the Harrison Road on the Granger plantation. Papa looked from J.C. to Stuart, who eyed him insolently with his eyes steady on Stuart. Papa said, "Your papa give you leave to talk along the way?" No, sir. I just got stopped a minute ago, and I was going on right now." "Then go on then," said Papa, "before your mama gets worried." J.C. nodded and moved off to obey. "See you, J.C., Stuart called after her. J.C., clearly unsettled, glanced back at us in the car and hurried down the road. Papa watched her until she had turned up the path leading to her house. Then he put the car in gear and started backing away. "Now how come you went and sent her away?" Stuart called with an uneasy insolence. "We was just getting into some good conversation." "Come on, Stuart," said Joe Billy in an attempt to ease gracefully out of the encounter. "Let's go." But Stuart continued, "Seems to me what's between us and J.C. is our business." Uncle Hammer retorted, "And just what is the business?" Stuart smiled. "What do you think? What other business we'd have with a nigger but—" Before the word was out, before Stuart realized that he had made a terrible mistake, the car door swept open and Uncle Hammer cannoned out of the moving car. Papa, practically stripping the gears, put the car in neutral and leaped from the other side to halt under Uncle Hammer before he rounded the car and reached Stuart. Stacy, too, jumped out, running after Papa. Little man Christopher John and I sat wide-eyed, watching, afraid, for we now knew what could happen to Uncle Hammer if he touched Stuart. Hammer, now hold on," Papa cried, reached in before he reached the retreating Stuart. "We've had enough trouble. Leave it alone." That peck of wood needs his neck broke. Get him out of here, Papa shouted at Joe Billy as he pushed against Uncle Hammer. Both of y'all, go on. We don't need this kind of trouble. Go on. Joe Billy nodded and elbowed Stuart to get into the car. But Stuart, realizing that Papa was not going to allow Uncle Hammer to touch him, grew insolent once more. He knew that the power was in the color of his skin. And when Joe Billy put his hand on his arm to pull him toward the car, he jerked away. Eyeing us with a superior smirk, he slowly walked over to the car and got in. When they had driven away, Papa released his hold on Uncle Hammer, but Uncle Hammer was no longer fighting him. He had stopped at the sight of the white boy's insolence and had stood watching him with a coldness greater than I had ever seen in him. "You all right?" Papa asked. "What you think?" said Uncle Hammer, and came back to the car. Papa and Stacy followed. I sat waiting for someone to say something. No one did. Uncle Hammer was too angry to talk, and Papa knew it. There could be no reasoning with Uncle Hammer when he was angry. When we reached the Wigginses, I pulled Stacy aside. "What was Jaycee doing with them boys?" I questioned. Stacy turned away without answering. I pulled him back. "I want to know." "Now how you think I know? How come Uncle Hammer got so mad?" "'Cause when a white boy's around a colored girl, they's up to no good. That's why. You just remember that." "Well, don't get mad at me. I ain't done nothing. Anyway, how come I gotta remember it?" "Let go, Cassie." Stacy pulled away and headed for the barn where little Willie was waiting. Christopher John, having witnessed the encounter from the Wigginses' front porch, hurried over as Stacy walked away. "What's the matter, Cassie?" he asked. I shook my head. I didn't know, and I certainly didn't know what J.C. Peters talking to Stuart Walker and Joe Billy Montier had to do with me. I wasn't interested in any kind of boys. And that is the end of Chapter 5. So, until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May He make His face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and grant you His peace.